All right, we're going to build a whack-a-mole game, and so this is the video tutorial on it. So hopefully you'll be able to follow along very easily. I'm going to be zooming in and out a little bit so that you can see the code. So hopefully that's not too distracting. So we're going to start with our on start. We're going to create a couple of variables to start. One is called game running, and the other one is called mole position. Oops. All right. So to start the game, we will use one of those set variable blocks, and we're going to set the game running variable to false. You find the false block in the logic section. I'm going to plop it in there. You'll see that the area is circular, and the false one is actually a hexagon, but it actually does fit in there. All right. So the reason we're setting the game running variable to false is because we don't want the game to start until we press the A button, and we'll program that later. But we just want it at the very beginning, the game to not start when we plug in the microbit. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is program our game pads. So we will be building a board with some aluminum game pads, and each one of those is like a button. So we need to program those first. We're going to start by building one, and then we'll copy and paste the other ones. So in our inputs here, we're going to start with on pin 0. So when we press the pin 0 button, which we will build, then we want it to, if we get it right, we want it to add a point. If we get it wrong, we want it to go game over. So to do that, we're going to use this if true statement. And what we're going to do is we're going to say that, so if the mole position is the same as the pad that we touch, then add a score. So we're going to go to variable, and we're going to take this out, and then we're going to go to logic, and we're going to put that in there. So we're going to say if the mole position is 0, which is one of the numbers that we're going to use, then add a score. So you'll notice that when it's pin 0, it's also mole position 0. So I try to do that to make it easiest to understand. So when we press pin 0, and that is the same as mole position 0, we will add a point. So we add points by going down to the game section, and we say change the score by 1. All right, so that's if it is the same. If the pin position and the mole position are the same, then we're going to change the score by 1. If they are different, we want the game to be over. So what we're going to do in that case is we're going to say set game running to false. So that means the game is over. And once again, we find that game running, the false block in the logic section. All right, so that's the controls for pin 0. The controls for pin 1 and pin 2 are pretty much the same. So we're going to right click on the pink block here, or purple block, and we're going to duplicate it. You notice it goes grayed out. That's because we can't have the same pin acting in different ways, so we can't duplicate it. So we'll just change that to pin 1, and you'll see now it turns back to purple. And we're going to change that to 1. So now pin 1 has been programmed properly. So when pin 1 and mole position is 1, then we will change the score by 1. If pin 1 is pressed and mole position is not 1, then the game will be over. We're going to duplicate this again, and we're going to change it to pin 2 because we have 3 buttons and 3 mole locations. Oops, not 3, to 2. All right. So really quickly, we've built basically half of our code. All right, now let's actually have the section, let's build the section where the screen lights up. So we're going to actually go to on a button, and what we want is we want a countdown to happen when we trigger the A button. So we're going to show a string, and we're going to show 3, 2, 1. Right? You could say start. You could have something else there. It's up to you. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set the score to 0. And this is so that we don't have to reset the microbit every time. We can just press the A button.
Good afternoon, boys and girls, and staff members.
All right. So now we want to set the game running variable to true, because when we press the A button, we want the game to start. So we're going to choose logic and true, put it into there. All right, sometimes you'll see a little exclamation show up, and that's because in the past we've had game running as false, so it can only be true or false. It can't be a number. So sometimes we get a little alert saying that something's not correct. All right, so while the game running is true, we want the game to happen, and so we're going to have a a loop in here that happens as long as the game is running. So we're going to put a equals block in there, and we're going to say so as long as game running is true, repeat whatever is in the block. And then, like we did with rock, paper, scissors, we are going to set the mole position to a random number. The random number block is in the math section, and we need 3 different positions, 0, 1, and 2, as you see here, 0, 1, and 2. So we set that to 0, 1, and 2. And then we're going to say what it does when the mole position is, the number is 0 or 1 or 2. So we're going to use this if then or if true statement in here, or if else, and we're going to say if if mole position is equal to 0, then show this. So basically that's saying is when the game starts and it picks a random number 0 to 2, if the number happens to be 0, show this on the screen. Then we're going to press the plus so that we can get another one of these in there. And then we're going to put that in there, and we're going to say if the mole position is 1, then show a center mole. So this is the mole, for lack of well, we could use 1 dot to symbolize the mole or whatever you want. I just did it because it's location based. And then we could just put this in here, and then when it's when it's the third option, which is number 2, it could show up like this, and we would be done. But as a way of dissuading cheating, which I'll explain further later, I'm actually going to go like this and put that in there and change it to 2. And then we'll get rid of this. And the reason is I want it to be able to have specifically when it's 2, because we will have an instance where the mole position will be actually set to 3, even though it can't be done that way. And that's just so that you can add points later. All right, we're almost done. So now we're going to, between the end of the loop and the end of this if-then statement, we're actually going to put a pause in here, because if we don't, the game will happen so quickly that most people won't be able to play it very well. So that 500 milliseconds is going to basically put a pause in between showing, if it happens to be mole position 2 and it lights up here, then it's going to be a pause before it comes back and shows another one. We're going to put, so that should be good. And then we're going to add another pause down here underneath it so that when it's actually game over, this is what it'll do. So it'll clear the screen and pause. And then we're going to put another string in here that says game over. Oops. Game over. The kids will put something like GG in there for good game. And then we're going to set the mole position. Oops. So we're going to set the mole position to 3. And the reason we do that is because if we don't, if it's set to 1, 2, or 0, then people can keep adding points just by tapping the right pad. But once it's set to 3, they can't add points. So now we're just about done. We have 1 bit left, and that is to show our score. So we're going to show the score by pressing the A button and clicking on games here, and we're going to get the score, and we're going to say show number, and we're going to say score. And that is how you build the Whack-A-Mole game. It looks really big, but it's actually not that big. All right, remember to give it a name and save it and download it.